On Wednesday morning, JetBlue became the first commercial airline in nearly half a century to make a direct flight to Cuba. As the plane touched down, Secretary of State John Kerry tweeted, August 31st, 2016, the first U.S. commercial flight to Cuba since 1961, just over a year after raising the flag at U.S. Embassy Havana. Another step forward. The inaugural trip from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, took just 45 minutes. CBS News transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave is in Santa Clara. And Kris, we saw that John Kerry marked this trip as a step forward in the relationship between the two countries. Will more airlines follow?
Yeah, well, the airlines have been lining up to start service to Cuba. There is a real sense that there is pent-up demand to be here, to experience Cuba. You know, for a lot of Americans, this is sort of like the Forbidden Island. The government made it very hard for people to come here. They have relaxed the requirements, so while pure tourism isn't allowed, you can now decide what your cultural exchange program consists of when you decide to book. Before, you had to go through an organized tour. You had to go on a charter flight. It was very expensive. That has all changed. Just today, in fact, Secretary of Transportation Anthony Foxx, who was on this flight with us, announced in Havana that the Department of Transportation has okayed the U.S. airlines to begin service to Havana. There will be 20 daily flights from cities all over the U.S. Delta said they're going to start that service December 1st. American Airlines starts serving several cities in Cuba next week. So the service is starting to ramp up. Up to 110 daily flights into Cuba have been allowed and will likely be operating many by the end of the year.
And Kris, what was the process for JetBlue to start offering this service?
Well, one of the challenges is, typically when you start a new route, that's about a year process. They had to do this in 90 days. It was an accelerated timetable. That meant JetBlue and American Airlines shipping a bunch of equipment down here. It meant working with the Cuban government, because all the employees at the airports work for the Cuban government, to get them on the same page. Figuring out little things like the device that they use to scan bags uses a U.S. SIM card. Well, that didn't work down here, so they had to get SIM cards from a different country. How do you charge for bags here when you can't take credit cards because U.S. credit cards don't work? So that right now is a cash transaction. There were a lot of little problems to troubleshoot to get it done, but JetBlue really wanted to be the first.
All right, Kris Van Cleave in Cuba for us. Kris, thank you.
Sure thing.